Okay, Gabi and Edwin, thanks for the interview today. From Siltech and Crystal Cables, of course. Yes. We talked about this a little earlier, but in the high end at the moment, there's an overpopulation of very high quality cables. What do you think distinguishes Siltech and Crystal from the other high end manufacturers?
Well, I would start with the material choice, matched with the technology, the design capabilities we are using, and then matching this with construction and with listening, you get a very high standard. But most important is the skills. You make the cables in-house and use the best materials you can. So the metallurgy, the research for metallurgy, for constructions and for technologies is the most important part of the lot.
Sure. And I guess that applies to Siltech as well.
Yeah, it's kind of the same answer I should give, yes.
You share those sort of research facilities, yes, and data and materials.
It's one factory, so we have one factory, and the factory has its own research, and based on the ideas about sound, we manipulate the sound, so we get it in the direction that we want to have it, which for Crystal is quite different than from Siltech. We both have our own idea what is a realistic sound. There's no objective way to really measure it, and sometimes in technology you have a lot of options that you get to equal good ways, but they sound different, and then you decide by listening to it what you do. But 90% of our development is purely technical, and the last 10% is listening. And usually not the most difficult task, to be honest.
Right.
So what indeed sets us apart is the high-tech materials from the beginning of Siltech, from the beginning of Crystal, being silver gold, silver crystals. In the case of a new series with copper conductors, that's monocrystal copper. So we always want to have the edge, always the advantage over other brands of having the best materials that you possibly can get on this earth to use it, regardless of the cost. And that has a very nice side effect that is very stable in time. Actually, quality of both our brands slowly improve in time, which is an effect that if we have time we can discuss later. It's a metallurgic effect that the surface area gets smoother when you use it longer, and because of that, distortion of the cable basically drops. With copper it's very difficult to get it because easy oxidation prevents that process of improving further. But with silver and silver gold, that's an important effect. Another thing is that from the lowest cost cable until the highest, the quality is basically the quality of materials is the same. A lower cost cable from our brands is not lower cost materials. And we learned that from the car industry that does the same. If you have a good car manufacturer and even their lower priced cars have the same quality appearance, and we think that's very important.
Sure. What do you think is different about gold as a conductor? Because not many manufacturers use gold. So what do you think, Siltech or Crystal Cable, what do you think that is special about gold?
Gold has a unique capability. It's very malleable, so it's a material that you really can bend and squeeze without losing its property. With other materials, certainly you will get micro cracks, which hinder the quality of the performance. So the conductance is decreased by bending it. In the case of gold, it's not. So our principle basically is a kind of, officially it's not an alloy, although technically it is. It's the silver microcracks are filled with gold, so it's like cement in a wall, and so it's a mechanical function. At the same time, because of its high conductance, which is the third in row from the materials, so it's not far behind silver. It means it's much better than having air in a microcrack. You get a smoother cable, it's softer, so that it's quite elastic, and while bending it a lot, so using a lot in practice, doesn't decrease the quality.
No.
That's the function of the gold.
Sure. So the gold doesn't detach from the conductor itself?
Never.
You're saying it's kind of bonding, so there's no
Yes.
there's no way of detaching it when you bend the cable and so on?
Yeah.
No.
So it's not a plating, it fills, you could say, bad spots between crystals, and that's a very interesting process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about, you started to talk about crystals. I asked this question before. What do you think of the long crystal, short crystal conductor?
Yeah, that's
story.
It's like discussing front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, or four-wheel drive.
Right.
They all have their benefits. Short crystals mean in practice that you have a lot more crystals per, let's say, millimeter. So you have more boundaries. On the other hand, it's easier to produce it. Longer crystal have less boundaries but bigger ones, and that's because during the cooling process of the material, the crystals group together in a kind of ball-shaped structures, and that also means that the errors between that and the next one are bigger. So it's a matter of having a lot of small errors or a few big errors, and as you can imagine, the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
In our case, we pioneered that in the 90s already, so 20 years ago, and we came in that time to the conclusion that about 150 micron, which is 7 per millimeter, is a good length of a crystal, very well balanced. And the nice thing is still today, if we do experiments, we take shorter crystals. They have some benefit at the low end and the larger at the high end, and you still have to balance it out.
Sure.
Of course, our latest technology is to avoid crystal boundaries whatsoever, that you get one long chain of flat-lying atoms, sometimes called single crystal.
Okay. Is that where the gold comes in as well, where it bonds those crystals?
No, because that's a perfect, smooth, long chain of atoms.
Yeah.
There are officially no boundaries anymore.
Okay.
Still in practice things can happen during manufacturing, but there are very few boundaries, and that means that you don't need the gold anymore. So the gold was really the cement that made it a perfect conductor. The monocrystal process is more expensive than is the silver gold process, although you save on the side of the gold, which is quite expensive nowadays. But still, it's a better. So monocrystal is the best solution, and that also always has to be a single metal.
Sure.
So you can do it with gold. You can make a single crystal gold cable, or pure gold, or pure silver, or pure copper.